"You're 74, Mom. It's not worth the cost anymore." That's what my son said to me on a Tuesday afternoon, right after I'd finished watering my tomato plants. Not a question, not a discussion. Just a fact, delivered the way you'd tell someone their magazine subscription got canceled. I was still holding the phone when the line went dead. Randall had already hung up. Didn't wait for my response, didn't ask how I felt about it, didn't even pause long enough for me to say, "Wait." Just dropped that sentence into my ear and disappeared, like tossing a lit match into dry grass and walking away. The phone felt warm in my hand. My kitchen smelled like the coffee I'd made an hour ago, the one that was sitting cold now on the counter. Outside, a bird was singing something stupid and cheerful, completely unaware that my own child had just informed me that keeping me alive wasn't a worthwhile investment. $380 a month. That's what I paid. Auto-pay from my checking account. Same account I'd had for 31 years. Never missed a payment. Not once. Not when Frank died and I could barely remember to eat. Not when the furnace broke and I had to choose between heat and groceries. Not during the pandemic when everything felt like it was falling apart. 23 years of payments, pulled automatically on the 15th of every month, and I never once called to complain about the cost. But apparently, I wasn't worth it anymore. I sat down at my kitchen table, the one Frank and I bought at a garage sale in 1987, and I looked at my hands. They were shaking. Not a lot, not dramatically, just this small tremor that wouldn't stop. I've had steady hands my whole life, 34 years as an ER nurse, and my hands never shook. Not during codes, not during traumas, not when I was elbow deep in someone's chest trying to keep them alive. But now, sitting in my own kitchen, after a 2-minute phone call from my son, they wouldn't be still. My name is Glenda. I'm 74 years old. I live alone in a 3-bedroom house in Ohio that I paid off in 1999. I raised one child, buried one husband, and until about 15 minutes ago, I thought I understood how the world worked. I was wrong.
This is Grace. Before we go any further, I want you to think about something. Is your name on your own insurance? Your bank account? Does your child have access? Could they make changes tomorrow without telling you? Glenda trusted her son. She thought he was taking care of her. She was wrong.
The first thing I did after I stopped shaking was call the insurance company. I figured there had to be a mistake. Maybe Randall meant something else. Maybe he was talking about a different policy, something I'd forgotten about. Maybe my hearing was going, and I'd misunderstood the whole conversation. The hold music played for 11 minutes. I counted. When you're sitting alone in a quiet house trying not to panic, you count things. Thank you for holding, Mrs. Whitfield. How can I help you today? I need to check on my health insurance policy, I said. I think there might be an error. Of course. Can you verify your date of birth and the last 4 digits of your social security number? I gave her the information. I heard her typing. Then a pause that lasted too long. Mrs. Whitfield, I'm showing that your policy was terminated 3 days ago. 3 days. He'd done it 3 days ago and waited until today to tell me. That can't be right, I said. I didn't cancel anything. The cancellation was requested by the primary policyholder. More typing. A Mr. Randall Whitfield. He added you to the family plan in 2019, and he submitted a termination request last Friday. But I pay for it, I said. The payments come out of my account. Yes, ma'am, I can see that. But the policy is in Mr. Whitfield's name. He has the authority to make changes to coverage. I remember staring at the little notepad I keep by the phone. Frank's handwriting was still on the top page, a grocery list from 12 years ago that I'd never had the heart to tear off. Milk. bread, the good cheese. Call Randall. So, my son can cancel my health insurance without my permission? If he's the policyholder, yes, ma'am. I'm very sorry. I thanked her and hung up. That's the thing about my generation. We thank people even when they've just confirmed our worst fears. Politeness as armor. Politeness as denial. Politeness because if we stop being polite, we might start screaming and never stop. I sat there for a long time after that call. The coffee got colder. The bird outside eventually shut up. The afternoon light shifted from yellow to orange to that gray color that means evening is coming, whether you're ready or not. I kept thinking about 5 years ago when Randall suggested I join their family plan. It'll be simpler, he'd said. One bill, one policy, less paperwork for everyone, and I can keep an eye on things for you. He'd smiled when he said it. Paula was there too, nodding along, and I remember feeling grateful. Grateful that my son wanted to take care of me. Grateful that I wouldn't have to navigate the insurance maze alone. I signed whatever he put in front of me. I didn't read the fine print. Why would I? He was my son. The next morning, I drove to Randall's house. 35 minutes on the highway, then another 10 through the subdivision where all the houses look the same. Beige siding, 2-car garages, lawns that someone else mows. They'd moved there 8 years ago after I gave them the down payment, $40,000 from my savings account, the money Frank and I had put away for someday. I figured helping my son buy a house was as good a someday as any. Paula answered the door. She was wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt that probably cost more than my winter coat, and she had that look on her face. The one that meant I was interrupting something, even though it was 11 in the morning on a Saturday, and I could see the TV playing some home renovation show in the background. Glenda, she said, not Mom. Never Mom. Randall didn't mention you were coming. I didn't call ahead. I need to talk to him about something important. She didn't invite me in. Just stood there in the doorway, one hand on the frame, blocking the entrance to the house I'd helped pay for. He's really busy today. Work stuff. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. I'd worked 60-hour weeks for 3 decades, real work, the kind where people died if you made a mistake. And I'd still found time to answer the door when my mother showed up. I'll wait, I said. Paula's jaw tightened. I saw it. That little flex of muscle that meant she was annoyed, but couldn't say so directly. Fine. You can sit on the porch. I'll tell him you're here. So I sat on the porch. Their porch, with the expensive outdoor furniture and the potted plants that someone else watered. I sat there for 40 minutes, watching cars drive by, watching a neighbor walk a dog, watching my own reflection in the glass door that stayed firmly closed. 40 minutes. Like I was selling vacuum cleaners and they were hoping I'd give up and leave. When Randall finally came out, he was holding his phone, scrolling through something. He didn't put it away when he sat down across from me, just kept glancing at it, like whatever was on that screen was more important than whatever I had to say. Mom, what's going on? Paula said you just showed up. You canceled my health insurance. He sighed, actually sighed, like I was being unreasonable. I told you about that yesterday. You told me. You didn't ask me. Because I knew you'd make a big deal out of it. He finally put the phone down, but he was checking his watch now, twice in the first 2 minutes. Look, it's not personal. Troy's got tuition coming up, and we need to tighten the budget. His books alone cost $800 this semester. I pay for that insurance, Randall. $380 a month from my own account. And I appreciate that. But the policy's in my name, which means I'm responsible for it. And right now, it doesn't make sense. doesn't make sense." I repeated his words back to him, trying to understand them. "I'm 74 years old. I have high blood pressure and a family history of heart disease. How does my health insurance not make sense?" He looked at me then, really looked, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't love, wasn't even guilt. It was something colder. Calculation. "Mom, you barely go to the doctor. You're healthy. You said yourself your last checkup was fine. That's $4,500 a year for what? A couple of office visits?" "For what happens if something goes wrong," I said. "For what happens if I fall, or have a stroke, or need surgery. That's what insurance is for. And if something like that happens, we'll figure it out then." He picked up his phone again. "Right now, the money is better used somewhere else." Through the window behind him, I could see into the kitchen. The laptop on the counter was open, screen facing me. I couldn't read much, just colors, columns. My eyes aren't what they used to be. But I could make out a spreadsheet. And at the top, in bold letters, 2 words: Mom costs. I didn't say anything, didn't let my face change, just filed that image away in the part of my brain that stores things I don't want to think about yet. "Randall," I said slowly, "I gave you $40,000 for this house. You helped with the down payment, that's different. I paid for Troy's first year of college. $28,000. And we were grateful. Every month for 19 years, I've sent $200 for the grandkids. That's over $45,000. He stood up. "Mom, I don't have time for this. You're keeping score now? That's not how family works." But it was how family worked, apparently. He just didn't like having the same math applied to himself. "I'm not keeping score," I said. "I'm pointing out that I've given you more than $100,000 over the years, and you're telling me that $4,000 a year for my health insurance is too expensive. It's not about the money. Then what is it about?" He didn't answer. Just stood there, checking his watch again, waiting for me to leave. Paula appeared in the doorway. "Troy needs help with something," she said to Randall. Then, to me, without quite meeting my eyes, "Good to see you, Glenda." And that was it. Conversation over. My son walked back into his house and I walked back to my car. And somewhere between the porch and the driver's seat, I realized something had shifted. Not broken, that would come later, but shifted. Like when you feel the first tremor before an earthquake and you know the ground isn't solid anymore. I didn't start the car right away, just sat there with my hands on the wheel, looking at the house I'd helped buy, thinking about the spreadsheet I'd seen through the window. Mom costs. He had me in a spreadsheet. I kept thinking about that on the drive home. 2 words, but they explained everything. Every shortened phone call, every forgotten birthday, every excuse not to visit. I wasn't his mother anymore. I was a line item. The thing about getting old is that people start treating you like a problem to be managed before they start treating you like a person to be loved. I'd seen it happen with my patients' families back when I worked the ER. Sons and daughters who showed up smelling like guilt and asking questions about long-term care before their parent was even out of surgery. I always told myself my family would be different. Turns out, I was just better at lying to myself. I should tell you about the years before this, the slow slide from mom to problem, because it didn't happen overnight. Abuse never does. And yes, I'm calling it that now, even though it took me months to use that word. Financial abuse. Emotional abuse. The kind that doesn't leave bruises, just hollows you out from the inside until you're standing in your own kitchen, wondering when you stopped mattering. After Frank died, Randall stepped in. At first, it felt like help. He offered to manage my bills, just the complicated ones, so I wouldn't have to worry. He suggested I add him to my bank accounts in case of emergency. He convinced me to give him power of attorney, limited, just for practical stuff. I signed everything. I was grieving. I was tired. And he was my son. The first few years, nothing changed. He paid the electric bill, the water bill, the property taxes. He sent me summaries every month. It all seemed above board. Professional, even. I told myself I was lucky to have such a responsible child. But somewhere around year 3, the summaries stopped coming. When I asked about them, Randall said he'd streamlined the system, and I didn't need to worry about the details. When I asked to see my bank statements, he said he'd switched everything to paperless. And could I really figure out the online stuff at my age? I could have. I'm old, not stupid. But I didn't push back. That's the part I'm most ashamed of. I didn't want to seem difficult, didn't want to seem like I didn't trust my own son, didn't want to be one of those old people who make everything harder for everyone else. So I smiled and nodded and let him handle things. Meanwhile, the requests started coming. Small at first. Mom, Troy needs new soccer cleats. The good ones are $150. Mom, Paula's car needs repairs. Could you help out this month? Mom, we're a little short on the mortgage. Just until my bonus comes through. I gave and gave and gave. That's what mothers do, right? We give until there's nothing left, and then we give some more, because our children need us, and need is a word that doesn't have an off switch. I paid for Troy's braces. I paid for Paula's business, some essential oils thing that never made a penny. I paid for vacations I wasn't invited on. I paid for a kitchen renovation I saw only in photos. Every time I wrote a check or transferred money, I told myself it was an investment in my family, in my future, in the people who would take care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. I was nickel and dimed right out of the family, and I didn't even notice until the jar was empty. The red flags were there, of course. They always are. Looking back, I can see them lined up like traffic cones, warning me to slow down, to pay attention. But I was too busy driving to notice. 3 years ago, Paula stopped inviting me to Thanksgiving. It's just easier with fewer people, she said. You understand. I didn't understand, but I said I did. I spent that Thanksgiving eating a turkey sandwich alone, watching the Macy's parade on TV, telling myself it was fine. 2 years ago, Randall forgot my birthday. Not the call. He made a call, a week late, full of apologies about how crazy things have been, but he forgot to mention it at all when it actually happened. 72 years old, and my only child didn't remember the day I was born. I keep wondering if anyone else has gone through this. If I'm the only mother whose son forgot her birthday and then expected her to pretend it didn't sting. Please tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me this has happened to you too. Last Christmas, I drove to their house with gifts for everyone. A cashmere sweater for Paula. A video game thing for Troy that the store clerk swore was popular. A bottle of Randall's favorite whiskey. They gave me a candle. Vanilla scented. Still had the clearance sticker on the bottom. Paula laughed when she saw me notice it. Oh, that was supposed to come off. Randall, you were supposed to check the presents. Nobody apologized. Nobody offered to exchange it. I drove home with that candle on my passenger seat. $40 poorer and something heavier lodged in my chest. I lit the candle once, a few weeks later. It smelled like nothing. I threw it away after that, which felt like throwing away something larger. A hope, maybe. The last bit of pretending I'd been doing. There were other things, too. Small cruelties that I filed away and tried not to examine too closely. Paula reorganizing my spice cabinet every time she visited, putting everything in alphabetical order even though she knew I'd arranged them by how often I used them. It just makes more sense this way, Glenda. It didn't make sense to me, but I didn't argue. Randall forgetting to invite me to Troy's high school graduation party until the day before, then acting surprised when I said I couldn't make it work. I thought Paula told you. I guess wires got crossed. Wires didn't cross. Wires were cut. The way Paula would comment on what I ate. Another cookie, Glenda? At your age, you really should watch your sugar, said with a smile. Always with a smile. Cruelty wrapped in concern, the way some people wrap fish in newspaper. The time Randall asked me to co-sign a loan for a boat, and then got angry when I said no. You have the credit, Mom. It's not like you're using it for anything. As if my credit score existed for his convenience. As if everything I had was just sitting there, waiting for him to claim it. I said no to the boat. It was one of the few times I held my ground. He didn't speak to me for 3 weeks after that. When he finally called, he acted like nothing had happened. That's how it always went. He'd push, I'd resist. He'd punish me with silence. And then we'd pretend the whole thing never occurred. A cycle I knew by heart but couldn't seem to break. The thing about being a mother is that you're trained from the beginning to put yourself last. Their needs first. Their happiness first. Their future first. And that's fine when they're children, when they actually need you to keep them alive. But somewhere along the way, the sacrifice becomes a habit, and the habit becomes an expectation, and the expectation becomes this. Sitting alone in your house, wondering when your love stopped being enough. But the worst part, the part I keep coming back to, is the conversation I overheard last spring. I'd stopped by unannounced, which Paula hated, but I had a bag of Troy's old yearbooks I'd found in my attic and thought he might want them. The front door was unlocked. I let myself in. From the kitchen, I could hear Randall and Paula talking. They didn't know I was there. She's going to live forever, Paula said. I swear that woman will outlive us all just to spite me. Randall laughed. She's 73. How much longer can she really last? Long enough to drain every penny. Have you looked at the numbers lately? I know. I'm working on it. Work harder. Troy needs a car next year. And I am not touching our savings when she's sitting on that house and God knows how much else. I left before they saw me. Put the yearbooks back in my trunk. Drove home with their words bouncing around my skull like rocks in a tin can. She's going to live forever. How much longer can she really last? I'm working on it. I told myself they were stressed. Money trouble makes people say ugly things. I told myself Paula had always been dramatic. I told myself Randall didn't mean it the way it sounded. I told myself a lot of things that turned out not to be true. The library was quiet when I went the next afternoon, not the day after the insurance call. That day I just sat in my house, too stunned to move. But the day after that, I got in my car and drove downtown, pulled into the parking lot next to the old brick building where I'd taken Randall for story time when he was 3, and walked through the doors like I had some kind of plan. I didn't have a plan. I just couldn't be in my house anymore, surrounded by photos of a family that apparently saw me as an expense. The computers were in the back corner. A teenager showed me how to log on, patient and kind, in that way young people sometimes are when they're not in a hurry. I sat down at the screen and stared at the search bar for a long time. Then I typed, "Can my son cancel my health insurance without my permission?" The answer, spread across several websites, was yes. If he's the policyholder, if the policy is in his name, if he added you as a dependent. I scrolled through legal advice forums, through articles about insurance rights, through a government website that explained things in tiny, impossible fonts. Everything confirmed what the insurance company had told me. I was covered by someone else's policy, which meant I had no control over it. I could pay for it every month for 20 years, and it would still belong to the person whose name was at the top. I typed something else. Elder financial abuse signs. The results made my stomach turn. Family member has access to your accounts. Sudden changes to legal documents. Isolation from friends and family. Unexplained withdrawals or transfers. Family member makes financial decisions without consulting you. Reluctance to discuss finances or provide statements. I read the list 3 times. Then I read it again. 8 out of 10. I hit 8 out of 10. My hands were shaking again, but it was different this time. Not fear, not grief. Something hotter. Something that had been buried for years under good manners and benefit of the doubt and the desperate need to believe my son loved me. I spent 2 hours at that library computer. I learned about power of attorney and how it can be misused. I learned about financial exploitation of the elderly and how rarely it gets reported. I learned that 34% of financial abuse is committed by family members, usually adult children. I learned that what was happening to me had a name. It wasn't just family drama or generational conflict or me being too sensitive. It was a thing that happens to people. A crime, technically, though I knew I'd never report it. Not because I didn't believe it was wrong, but because some part of me still couldn't make my mouth form those words. My son is abusing me. I found a support forum too. Hundreds of posts from people like me. Mostly women, mostly older, mostly mothers. Stories that could have been mine, word for word. Sons who wanted money. Daughters-in-law who wanted them gone. Grandchildren used as bargaining chips. Houses given away, savings depleted, trust shattered beyond repair. One woman wrote, "I raised him for 18 years and he repaid me by treating me like a walking ATM." Another said, "My daughter told me I was selfish for not giving her my house while I was still alive. She said she shouldn't have to wait for her inheritance." I read for hours. Story after story after story. Some were worse than mine. Women who'd lost everything, who were homeless, who'd been put in nursing homes against their will. Some were better. Women who'd caught on early, who'd protected themselves, who'd rebuilt their lives. All of them were heartbroken in ways that never fully healed. That's the thing about being hurt by your own child. It's not like other wounds. It doesn't close up clean. It stays tender forever. A bruise you carry invisibly, one that aches every time you see a family together and wonder what you did wrong. When I finally logged off the computer, the sun was going down. The librarian, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes, asked if I was all right. "I'm fine," I said. The lie came out smooth and easy. I'd had a lot of practice. I drove home in the dark, thinking about the spreadsheet. Mom costs. I wondered what the columns were. Medical expenses, probably. Gifts, the ones I gave them, not the vanilla candle they gave me. Time, maybe, calculated in hours they had to spend tolerating my presence. And ROI, return on investment. My son had reduced my entire existence to a cost-benefit analysis, and according to his math, I wasn't profitable anymore. That night I called my sister Ruth. We hadn't really talked in 2 years, not a real talk anyway. Just birthday cards and the occasional thinking of you text that we both knew meant nothing. Ruth had moved to New Mexico after her divorce, found herself a little house in Albuquerque with a garden and a book club, and a life that didn't include the family drama she'd grown up with. I'd always envied her that. The leaving, the starting over. I thought I was too old for it. Glenda? She sounded surprised. Is everything okay? I opened my mouth to say, fine, everything's fine. The same words I'd been saying for years. But something stopped them in my throat. No, I said instead. Actually, nothing is okay, and I think I need to tell someone before I lose my mind. She didn't interrupt, didn't gasp or exclaim or offer empty comfort. Just listened while I told her everything. The insurance, the spreadsheet, the years of giving, the slow disappearance of respect. I talked for 45 minutes without stopping, and when I was done, my face was wet and my throat was raw, and I felt emptier and lighter than I had in years. Come stay with me, Ruth said. I've got a spare room. Book club meets on Thursdays. There's a hiking group. Well, more like a walking group, we're not spring chickens. That does trails on Tuesday mornings. You'd like it here. I can't just leave. Why not? I didn't have a good answer. I had a house, sure. Furniture, possessions, the accumulation of 74 years. But none of that was a reason. It was just stuff. Because I've never left, I said finally. I've lived within 30 miles of where I was born my whole life. I don't know how to be anywhere else. That's not a reason, Glenda. That's a habit. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing and doing are different things, and I wasn't ready to do anything yet. Let me think about it, I said. Don't think too long. Thinking is just another word for talking yourself out of things. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and looked at the photo of Frank on the refrigerator. He'd written a message on a card once, stuck to the frame. You're worth more than you know. I'd kept it there for 12 years, barely seeing it anymore. Just part of the background, like the hum of the refrigerator or the crack in the ceiling. I peeled the card off carefully and put it in my purse. Then I went to bed. I didn't sleep well. But something had changed. Some small gear had shifted in the machinery of my mind. I wasn't ready to leave yet, but for the first time, I was ready to start getting ready. A week passed, then 2. I went through the motions of my life, grocery shopping, gardening, calling the few friends I had left, but underneath it all, I was watching, paying attention, keeping track of things I'd let slide for years. I requested copies of my bank statements. The account Randall managed had less in it than I remembered, a lot less. I couldn't make sense of all the transfers, the small withdrawals that added up to large ones, the fees and charges that seemed to multiply like rabbits. But I knew something was wrong. You don't need a degree in accounting to recognize when numbers don't match what they should be. I also requested my credit report, something I hadn't done in years. There was a credit card I didn't recognize. Not mine. Opened in my name, but tied to an address I'd never lived at. I didn't confront Randall about any of this. Not yet. I was gathering information the way I used to gather patient information in the ER. Symptoms first. Diagnosis later. Treatment only when you understand what you're dealing with. And then, on a Saturday morning when I wasn't expecting anyone, Randall showed up. He let himself in with his key. Didn't knock. Didn't call first. Just walked into my house like he owned it, which I realized with a sick feeling he probably thought he would someday. I was at the kitchen table going through old papers, bank statements, insurance documents, legal papers I'd signed without reading. They were spread across the table like evidence, which I suppose they were. Mom. Randall stopped in the doorway. What is all this? My financial records. I thought I was handling that for you. You were. Now I'm handling it myself. He came closer, scanning the papers with that same calculating look I'd seen on his porch. You're going to get confused. There's a system, and you'll mess it up. I was a nurse for 34 years. I can read numbers. Medical numbers, sure. But this is complicated. So explain it to me. I pointed to one of the statements. Explain why there's a credit card in my name that I never opened. Explain why this account has $40,000 less than it did 3 years ago. Explain what miscellaneous transfer means when it shows up 11 times. His face changed. Just a flicker, but I caught it. Surprise, then something harder. Annoyance that I was asking questions. Anger that I was paying attention. Mom, this is exactly what I was afraid of. You're getting paranoid. This is why I handle things. So you don't have to worry. I'm not worried, I said. I'm curious. There's a difference. You're not making sense. Then help me make sense of it. Sit down. Go through these with me. He didn't sit. Instead, he started gathering the papers, stacking them into a pile. Let me take these home. I'll organize everything and bring you a summary. I put my hand on the stack. No. Mom, these are my papers, Randall, from my accounts. About my money. They stay here. We looked at each other across the table. 47 years of his life, every single day of which I'd loved him. Every scraped knee, every report card, every phone call from college asking for money I didn't have but sent anyway. I had given this boy everything I had, and he was standing in my kitchen trying to take the last of it. What's Mom costs? I asked quietly. His face went blank. What? The spreadsheet on your laptop. I saw it through your window. Mom costs. What does that mean? The silence stretched. I watched him decide whether to lie. It's just budgeting, he said finally. Everyone does it. Everyone tracks their mother like an expense? It's not tracking, it's... Look, we have financial obligations. We need to know where the money goes. And where does it go, Randall? According to your spreadsheet? He ran a hand through his hair, agitated. This is exactly why I didn't want to have this conversation. You take everything personally. My health insurance being canceled is personal. A credit card in my name that I didn't open is personal. A spreadsheet calculating whether I'm worth keeping alive is pretty goddamn personal. I'd never cursed at my son before. Not once in 47 years. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and necessary. No one is calculating whether to keep you alive, he said, but his voice had changed. Defensive now, cornered. Then what's the ROI column for? Another silence, longer this time. How do you know about that? Does it matter? He looked at the floor, at the papers, at his own hands, everywhere but at me. Mom, you don't understand how hard things have been. The economy, Troy's college, Paula's student loans that we're still paying off. We're drowning. And you're sitting on this house, all this space, money in accounts you don't even use. Money I earned. A house I paid for. And we're supposed to just wait around until you die to get any of it? The words landed like a slap. I felt them in my chest, in my throat, in the place where my heart was trying to keep beating steadily. Is that what you're waiting for? I asked. For me to die? That's not what She's going to live forever, I said, quoting Paula's words from last spring. How much longer can she really last? His face went white. You heard that? I heard enough. The kitchen was very quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, the sound of my own blood in my ears. Mom, I love you. His voice cracked on the word. But I can't keep doing this. We can't keep pretending everything is fine when we're barely making it, and you're just sitting here, holding on to everything, giving us nothing. I gave you $100,000. Years ago. And my health insurance? The $400 a month I paid for the privilege of being covered by my own son? That was different. How? Because he stopped. Swallowed. Because you're supposed to take care of yourself. You're the parent. You're supposed to handle your own stuff, not expect us to do it for you. I'd been standing this whole time. Now I sat down slowly, feeling every one of my 74 years in my bones. I never asked you to handle anything, I said. You offered. You said it would be easier. You said you wanted to help. I did want to help. No, you wanted access. There's a difference. He had no answer for that. He stood in my kitchen, in the house where he'd grown up, where I'd read him bedtime stories and made him chicken soup when he was sick and taught him how to ride a bike in the driveway. And he had no answer. I think you should leave, I said. Mom, now. He didn't move at first. Just stood there, like he couldn't believe I was serious. His whole life, I'd been the one who gave in, the one who apologized even when I hadn't done anything wrong, the one who smoothed things over, who made peace, who put his feelings ahead of my own. Not anymore. This isn't over, he said finally. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. We'll talk when you've calmed down. I am calm, I said. And I was. Calmer than I'd been in years. That's what scares you. He opened his mouth to argue, then thought better of it. Something in my face must have told him this was different. This wasn't his mother backing down. This was his mother standing up. He left without saying goodbye. The door didn't slam. Randall was too controlled for that. But the silence after it closed was louder than any argument. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that. The papers were still spread out in front of me, evidence of years I'd let slip away. Outside, the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and pink. It should have been beautiful. It just looked like endings. I thought about calling someone. A friend, maybe. But most of my friends had drifted away over the years, or died, or moved to be closer to their own families. I thought about calling Ruth, but I wasn't ready to say the words out loud yet. I wasn't ready to make it real. So I sat in the quiet and let the truth settle into my bones. My son didn't love me. Or maybe he did. Somewhere deep down, in whatever way people like him are capable of love. But he didn't respect me. Didn't see me as a person with my own needs, my own rights, my own value beyond what I could provide for him. And I had let it happen. For years, I had let it happen. That was the hardest part to accept. Not that he was cruel, but that I had been complicit. Every check I wrote, every boundary I let him cross, every excuse I made on his behalf, I had taught him that this was acceptable, that I would always be there, always give more, always forgive. I had trained my own son to see me as less than human. The question now was, what was I going to do about it?
You're 74. It's not worth the cost. He said that to his own mother. She paid every month, never missed once. But her grandson needed textbooks, and suddenly her health didn't matter anymore. I've lived a long time. I've heard a lot of things. But this one kept me up at night.
After Randall left, I sat alone in my kitchen until the sun went down. I didn't cry. I was past crying. Something had drained out of me during that conversation. Not love, exactly, but the illusion of it. The story I'd been telling myself about my family, about my place in it, about what I meant to the people I'd given my life to. The story was over, and I was still here, which meant I had to figure out what came next. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every conversation I could remember from the past 10 years, every request for money, every excuse not to visit, every time Randall or Paula had made me feel like an inconvenience, a burden, a problem to be managed. That boy knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. My mother used to say that about people who were all numbers and no heart. I never thought I'd apply it to my own son, but there it was, the truth I'd been running from for years. Around 3 a.m, I got up and made tea, sat at the kitchen table with Frank's photo propped against the salt shaker. "What would you do?" I asked him. "What would you tell me?" He didn't answer, of course. He'd been dead for 12 years, but I knew what he would have said. Frank was a practical man. He believed in protecting what was yours. He believed in family, but he also believed that family wasn't a free pass to be treated badly. "Take care of yourself," he would have said. "Nobody else is going to do it." I finished my tea. Then I started making a list. The bank opened at 9. I was there at 8:50, standing on the sidewalk, watching my breath make clouds in the cold morning air. The branch manager was a young woman named Destiny, which seemed like the kind of name that was either perfectly appropriate or deeply ironic. I couldn't decide which. She sat me down in her office, offered me coffee. I declined, and asked how she could help. "I want to close my accounts," I said. "All of them." Her eyebrows went up. "All of them? You have a checking account and 2 savings accounts with us, Mrs. Whitfield. That's a significant amount of money. I know what I have. I want to move it somewhere else. Can I ask why? Is there a problem with our service?" I looked at her, this young woman with her neat hair and professional smile, and I decided to tell the truth. "My son has access to these accounts. I don't want him to have access anymore." To her credit, Destiny didn't flinch. She just nodded, slowly, like she'd heard stories like this before. "I understand. We can certainly help you with that. Would you like to remove him as an authorized user instead of closing the accounts? That might be simpler." "No, I want to start fresh. New bank, new accounts, nothing connected to anything he knows about." "I can provide you with a cashier's check for the full balance. You'll need to open accounts elsewhere before you can deposit it, though. It's quite a large sum to be carrying around." "How large?" She checked her computer. $94,312, combined across all accounts. 94,000? Less than I'd thought. A lot less than it should have been, given how much I'd saved over the years. But still enough. Enough for whatever came next. "I'll take the check," I said. "And I'd like a statement of all transactions from the past 5 years. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every transfer. Can you do that?" "It might take a few days to compile. I can have it mailed to you." "I'll wait." Destiny looked at me with something like respect. "Give me an hour. I'll print what I can today." I sat in the lobby while she worked, watched people come and go. Young couples opening joint accounts. Small business owners making deposits. Ordinary people doing ordinary financial things. None of them looked like they were dismantling their entire relationship with their only child. But you never know what's going on behind someone's face. I'd learned that in the ER. People hide everything until they can't anymore. An hour later, I walked out with a cashier's check for $94,000 and a folder full of statements. I drove across town to a bank I'd never used before, a small credit union in a strip mall between a nail salon and a Chinese restaurant. The kind of place Randall would never think to look. I opened 2 new accounts, put the money in, took new cards with new PINs, memorized them instead of writing them down. Then I drove home and started making phone calls. I called the insurance company first. Bought my own policy, individual coverage, nothing connected to anyone else. It cost more than Randall's family plan, almost $600 a month. But it was mine. My name, my decision, my protection. I called a lawyer next. Not Mr. Sullivan from the old days. He'd retired years ago. Instead, I found a woman named Gloria Vance, who specialized in elder law. I explained the situation, the power of attorney I'd signed, the accounts I'd let Randall manage, the credit card in my name that I'd never opened. "This is unfortunately common," Gloria said. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. "Adult children gaining access to elderly parents' finances and taking advantage. We see it more than you'd think. What can I do about it?" "First, we revoke that power of attorney. Immediately. Then we pull your credit reports and dispute any unauthorized accounts. We may want to consider a cease and desist letter regarding financial contact, and depending on what the records show, there could be grounds for legal action. I don't want to sue my son. That's your choice. But you should know your options. I just want him to stop having any access to anything of mine. We can definitely do that." I made an appointment for the following week. Hung up the phone. Sat in my living room, looking at the walls I'd lived within for 31 years. Then I called Ruth. "I'm coming," I said. "I don't know for how long. Maybe a week, maybe longer. But I'm coming." "About time," she said. "I'll make up the spare room." The next few days were a blur of packing, sorting, deciding. I wasn't selling the house. Not yet, maybe not ever. But I was leaving it. For how long, I didn't know. Long enough to breathe. Long enough to figure out who I was when I wasn't being someone's burden. I called Troy. Not Randall, not Paula. Just Troy. He was 19, old enough to make his own choices about who he talked to. "Grandma?" He sounded confused. I hadn't called him directly in years. Everything went through his parents. "I wanted to let you know I'm going away for a while, to visit your Aunt Ruth in New Mexico." "Oh, okay." A pause. "Is everything all right?" "It will be. I just need some time." Another pause. Longer. "Grandma, I heard what happened. With the insurance. And the other stuff. Dad told me some of it." "What did he tell you?" "That you're upset. That you're overreacting. That you don't understand how hard things have been for us." He stopped. "But I also heard what he said to you, in the kitchen, about waiting for you to, you know." My throat tightened. "You heard that?" I was in the hallway. I came down for a glass of water. His voice dropped. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. I just left. You were 19 years old, hearing your father say something terrible. It's not your fault. It felt like my fault. Like I should have said something. You're saying something now. That matters." Silence on the line. I could hear him breathing, trying to find words. "Can I still talk to you?" he asked finally. "Even if you're mad at Dad?" "I'm not mad at your father. I'm done with your father. But that's between him and me. You're my grandson. That doesn't change." "Okay." Relief in his voice, and something else. Something that sounded like hope. "I'll call you when you're in New Mexico. if that's okay." "It's okay," I said. "It's more than okay." After we hung up, I finished packing. 2 suitcases, one for clothes, one for the things I couldn't leave behind. Photo albums, Frank's favorite coffee mug, the card from the refrigerator, a few books I'd never gotten around to reading. Everything else stayed where it was. Let the house hold it for me until I figured out what I wanted. The last thing I did before leaving was write a note. I thought about it for a long time, sitting at the kitchen table with a blank piece of paper, trying to find words that would explain everything I felt. But there weren't words for this. "Not really, just facts." I wrote, "You calculated my ROI. Here's yours, 0. I put the note on the kitchen table. Next to it, I left the key to my house. The spare key I'd given Randall years ago, the one I'd asked him to return 3 times and he'd always forgotten. I'd had the locks changed that morning. He could have this key. It wouldn't open anything anymore. Then I closed my front door, got in my car, and drove away. Randall started calling that night. I didn't answer. He called again the next morning, then 3 more times that afternoon, then twice before midnight. I watched his name appear on my screen over and over, and I let it go to voicemail. His messages started out confused, then turned angry, then landed somewhere in between. "Mom, we need to talk." "Mom, this is ridiculous." "Mom, you can't just disappear." "Mom, I don't understand what's happening." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I'd said everything in that note. 6 words. All he needed to know. After the first week, I blocked his number. Paula sent a letter. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope, tight, cramped, always trying to fit too many words into too small a space. I didn't open it, just wrote "Return to sender" on the front and dropped it in the mailbox. She sent another one the following week. Same result. 3 weeks after I left Ohio, Randall tracked down Ruth's number somehow. Called her house at 7 in the morning, demanding to know where I was, threatening legal action, saying I'd lost my mind and needed to come home immediately. Ruth let him finish his rant. Then she said, very calmly, "Randall, your mother is an adult. She can live wherever she wants. She doesn't owe you her location, or her time, or her money. And if you call this number again, I'll contact the police." She hung up on him, told me about it over breakfast, laughing so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. "The nerve of that boy," she said, "calling here like he owns the place, like he owns you." "He thought he did," I said. "For a long time, I think he really believed that." "Well, he knows different now." Yes, he did. Albuquerque was nothing like Ohio. The air was dry and thin. The sky seemed bigger somehow, stretched out like it had more room to breathe. Everything was the color of sand and rust and that particular blue that only exists in places where it doesn't rain enough. I liked it immediately, not because it was beautiful, though it was in its strange, sparse way, but because it didn't know me. I could walk down the street and no one knew I was someone's difficult mother, someone's budget problem, someone's ROI calculation. I was just a woman in her 70s, looking at the mountains, trying to remember what it felt like to belong to myself. Ruth's spare room was small but clean. A bed, a dresser, a window that looked out at her backyard garden. She'd planted tomatoes and peppers and something she called desert sage that smelled like memory when you crushed the leaves between your fingers. "You can stay as long as you want," she told me the first night. "There's no expiration date on family. The real kind, anyway." I started joining her book club. It met on Thursdays at a coffee shop downtown. 8 women between the ages of 62 and 79. All of them readers, all of them talkers, all of them survivors of something. We read literary fiction one month, trashy romance the next, biographies, mysteries, whatever someone suggested. I hadn't read for pleasure in years. There never seemed to be time between managing my house and being managed by my son. Now I devoured books like water. The hiking group was Ruth's other project. They called themselves the Desert Walkers, which sounded more ambitious than it was. Mostly we strolled through nature preserves, stopping to rest whenever someone's knees complained, pointing out birds and wildflowers, and occasionally complaining about our children. Almost everyone had a story. A daughter who only called when she needed money. A son who'd moved across the country to get away from family drama. A husband who'd died and left a mess of resentments behind. "We're all here for a reason," said a woman named Dolores, who was 78 and had the kind of posture that suggested she'd been carrying weight her whole life. Nobody ends up hiking in the desert at our age unless they're running from something or toward something. Sometimes both. I thought about that a lot. Running from, running toward. I wasn't sure which one I was doing. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe the important thing was just the running itself, the movement, the change, the refusal to stay stuck in a place that had stopped fitting. Dolores became something like a friend. She had her own story, a son who'd borrowed $30,000 for a business venture and then moved to Costa Rica without paying it back. A daughter who called only when she needed a babysitter. Grandchildren she saw only on holidays, if that. "I stopped chasing them," she told me one morning, as we sat on a bench watching the sun rise over the Sandias. "For years I chased. I called, I visited, I sent gifts, I made excuses for their behavior. And then one day I just stopped. I figured if they wanted me in their lives, they knew where to find me." "Did they find you?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The daughter did, eventually. Took her 3 years to realize I wasn't going to beg anymore. Now we talk once a month. It's not what I wanted, but it's honest. The son, she shrugged. Some people don't come back. And you have to make peace with that. I wasn't at peace yet. I didn't know if I ever would be. But talking to Dolores helped. Talking to all of them helped. These women who had survived their own versions of betrayal and come out the other side, scarred but standing. There was Margaret, who'd lost her house to a contractor scam her nephew had set up. Linda, whose husband had left her for a woman 30 years younger and then had the nerve to ask for alimony. Frances, who'd discovered after 42 years of marriage that her husband had a secret family 2 states over. We called ourselves the survivors, jokingly, but it wasn't really a joke. We had survived. Things that should have broken us. Things that would have broken us if we'd let them. Instead, we'd picked up the pieces and kept walking, one foot in front of the other, into whatever came next. Troy kept his promise. He called once a week, sometimes twice, always at strange hours because he was in college, and college students apparently never sleep. He told me about his classes, boring, his roommate, annoying, his girlfriend, complicated. He asked about New Mexico, about Ruth, about what I was reading. He never mentioned Randall except once, about a month after I'd left. "Dad's different," he said. "Quieter. Mom's pissed at him all the time. I think she blames him for you leaving. She's not wrong. I know, I just..." He trailed off. "I wish it hadn't happened this way." "So do I said. But it did happen, and I couldn't keep pretending it didn't. Will you ever come back? To Ohio, I mean. I don't know. Maybe. Probably not to live. But you'll visit? If there's something worth visiting for." He was quiet for a moment. I want to see you. In person. Not just phone calls. Then come out here. Spring break. Summer. Whenever you can. I'll show you the desert. Yeah? His voice brightened. You mean it? Of course I mean it. You're my grandson. That hasn't changed. It won't change. Okay, I'll figure it out. I'll come. After we hung up, I sat on Ruth's back porch and watched the sun set over the mountains. The sky turned orange, then pink, then that deep purple that always made me think of bruises healing. I was 74 years old. I had maybe 10 good years left, maybe more, maybe less. You never knew. But whatever years I had, they were mine now. No one else's. I thought about Randall. Not with anger, not anymore. Just with a kind of sad clarity. He was 47 years old, and he'd spent the last decade treating his mother like a resource to be extracted. I didn't know what had made him that way. Maybe Paula? Maybe money troubles? Maybe something broken in him that I'd never noticed or hadn't wanted to see. It didn't matter now. What mattered was that I'd stopped letting him do it. He hung me out to dry, I thought. But I didn't stay there. I took myself down and walked away. There's something powerful about leaving. Not the dramatic kind, with slammed doors and screaming matches. The quiet kind. The kind where you just stop being available for people who don't value you. Stop answering calls. Stop explaining yourself. Stop hoping things will get better if you just try harder. Love more, give more. Sometimes the best answer isn't words. It's absence. It's the empty chair where you used to sit.
Glenda didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't beg him to understand. She packed her bags, moved her money, and left a note on the table. You calculated my ROI. Here's yours. 0. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is walk away. Leave an empty chair. Let them figure out what they lost.
6 months later, I was still in New Mexico. The spare room had become my room. I'd hung pictures on the walls. A watercolor I'd bought at a street market. A photo of Frank from our trip to Yellowstone in 1988. A drawing Troy had mailed me from college. A cartoon cactus with a speech bubble saying, sharp but lovable like Grandma. Ruth and I had settled into a routine that felt less like visiting and more like living. Morning coffee on the porch, separate afternoons. She had her garden, I had my books and my walks. Dinners together, sometimes with friends, sometimes just us. Quiet evenings watching the sky change colors. I'd started volunteering at a senior center 3 days a week. Nothing fancy. Helping with meals, organizing activities, sitting with people who needed someone to listen. It felt good to be useful again. Not in the way Randall had wanted me to be useful, as a checkbook with a heartbeat. Really useful. Helping because I could, because I wanted to, because there was life left in me that deserved to go somewhere. Troy came for spring break, just like he'd promised. 4 days in Albuquerque, sleeping on Ruth's couch, following me on hikes that were probably boring for a 19-year-old, but which he endured without complaint. We talked more in those 4 days than we had in the previous 4 years. I'm changing my major, he told me on the second day. We were sitting at a picnic table at a trailhead, sharing sandwiches Ruth had packed for us. To what? Social work. I want to help people. Old people, specifically, like elder care stuff. I looked at him. This boy I'd known since he was a baby, now a young man with his father's jaw and his grandmother's stubbornness. Because of what happened? I asked. Partly. Mostly, I saw how Dad treated you. And I realized how common that is. How many people get taken advantage of by their own families. I want to do something about it. My eyes got hot. I blinked hard. That's a good reason. Thanks. He picked at his sandwich crust. I haven't told Dad yet. He'll probably say it's a waste of money. But I don't care. Good. Don't. He looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the little boy he'd been, gap-toothed and trusting, running across my backyard to show me a bug he'd found. Some things don't change. Some connections survive even the worst damage. I'm proud of you, I said, for thinking about other people, for not becoming like Dad. I wasn't going to say that, but you were thinking it. Maybe. He smiled, just a little. It's okay, I think about it too. I don't want to be like that. Cold, calculating, looking at people and seeing dollar signs. You won't be. You're already not. We finished our sandwiches and hiked back to the car. The desert stretched out around us, endless and indifferent. And I thought about how strange life was. How the worst things could sometimes lead to the best things. How losing your son could help you find your grandson. How leaving everything behind could be the start of something new. On the third day, Troy asked me something I wasn't expecting. Grandma, do you think Dad will ever change? We were sitting on Ruth's porch, watching the sunset. The sky was doing that thing it does in the desert, turning colors that shouldn't exist. Purples and oranges and pinks all bleeding into each other. I don't know, I said honestly. I hope so. For his sake, for yours. But you don't think he will? I think people can change if they want to. The question is whether they want to badly enough to do the work. Troy nodded slowly. He's been different since you left. Not better, just different. Angrier, I think. Like he doesn't understand what happened. He understands, I said. He just doesn't agree. What's the difference? Understanding means you see the truth. Agreeing means you accept it. Your father sees that I left. He sees that I took my money and my life and walked away. He just doesn't accept that he did anything to cause it. Troy was quiet for a long moment. He told me you were being manipulated. That Aunt Ruth was filling your head with ideas. What do you think? He looked at me with those serious eyes. I think you're the least manipulated person I know. I think you finally got tired of being treated like crap. I laughed, even though it wasn't funny. That's about the size of it. I told him that. Not in those words, but I told him he was wrong about you, that maybe he should look in the mirror instead of blaming everyone else. How did that go over? He didn't talk to me for a week. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was worth it. We sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the stars come out one by one. The desert gets dark fast once the sun goes down, and the stars are brighter than anywhere I've ever seen. Like someone threw a handful of diamonds across black velvet. Grandma? Troy said, just as I was about to suggest we go inside. Yes? I'm glad you left. I know it's weird to say that. I know it broke up the family or whatever. But I'm glad. You seem, I don't know, more like yourself. I reached over and squeezed his hand. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time. It's just the truth. The truth is often the nicest thing, I said, and the hardest. He left 2 days later, promising to come back in the summer, promising to call every week, promising to bring his girlfriend next time. I believed him. Some promises are made to be broken. His weren't. I watched his rental car disappear down the road, and I thought about all the years I'd spent hoping my family would become something they weren't. All the years I'd spent waiting for Randall to see me, really see me, the way Troy had learned to in just 4 days. Some people look at their parents and see people. Some people look and see only what they can take. I was lucky, in a strange way. I'd lost a son, but I'd found a grandson. I'd lost a family, but I'd found myself. It wasn't a trade I would have chosen, but it was the trade life gave me. And I was finally learning to be okay with that. I'm 74 years old. Some days my knees hurt and my back aches and I forget what I walked into a room for. Some days I miss Ohio. Not the life I had there, just the familiarity of it, the decades of knowing where everything was. Some days I think about Randall and wonder if he's changed, if he misses me, if he ever looks at that spreadsheet and feels ashamed. But most days, I'm just here, present, alive. Reading my books and walking my trails and drinking coffee with my sister and being surprised over and over by how much life is still left when you stop giving it away. Ruth asked me the other day if I regretted anything. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I regret the years I spent shrinking, I said, making myself smaller so other people would have more room. I regret believing I had to earn my place in my own family. I regret waiting so long to leave, but not leaving itself. No, never that. She nodded, satisfied. Good, because I like having you here. I like being here. And I do. I really do. I don't know if Randall will ever reach out, not to demand something or explain himself, but really reach out, to apologize, to understand, to try to rebuild what he broke. Maybe he will. People change sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. If he does, I'll listen. I'm not angry anymore, not the hot, sharp anger of that first week. What I feel now is more like distance. He's my son, and I love him the way you love someone you've known their whole life. But love doesn't mean access. Love doesn't mean permission. Love doesn't mean I have to let him hurt me again. If he calls and he's different, really different, not just different enough to get what he wants, then we can talk. Build something new, not what we had before, that's gone, but something better. Something with boundaries and respect, and the understanding that I am a person, not an investment. But if he doesn't change, if he calls only to guilt me, manipulate me, try to regain control, then I won't answer. And that will be okay too. I think about that spreadsheet sometimes. Mom costs. The clinical cruelty of reducing a human being to columns and calculations. But here's the thing. I've done some calculating of my own since then. The money I gave Randall over the years, over $100,000. The time I spent worrying about him, supporting him, making excuses for him. Countless hours. The pieces of myself I surrendered to keep the peace. Too many to count. And what did I get in return? A canceled insurance policy. A place in a budget. A son who looked at me and saw numbers instead of a person. The ROI on that relationship wasn't zero. It was negative. I gave more than I got, year after year after year, and the only return was the slow erosion of my self-respect. But here's what Randall never understood. I'm not an investment. I'm not a line item. I'm not a cost to be managed or a resource to be depleted. I'm a woman who spent 34 years saving lives in emergency rooms, who raised a child alone after her husband died, who survived things that would have broken weaker people. I'm worth more than any spreadsheet could calculate. And now, finally, I'm living like it. The sun is setting over the desert as I write this. Ruth is inside making dinner, something with green chiles, which she puts in everything out here. The air smells like dust and sage and possibility. Tomorrow the book club meets, and we're discussing a novel about a woman who reinvents herself at 70. The week after that, Troy is coming for another visit, this time bringing his girlfriend, who he says is nervous but excited to meet me. I don't know what the next year will bring, the next month, the next week. At my age, you learn to stop planning too far ahead. But I know what today brought. Peace, clarity, the quiet satisfaction of a life that finally belongs to me. If you're reading this and something feels familiar, if you have a child who treats you like a burden, a family that sees you as a resource, people in your life who calculate your worth in dollars and cents, please hear this. You are not a cost. You are not an investment. You are not a problem to be managed. You are a person, a whole, complete, valuable person. And you deserve to be treated like one. It took me 74 years to learn that. I hope it doesn't take you as long. But whenever you learn it, today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, it won't be too late. It's never too late to stop shrinking, to stop giving yourself away, to write a note that says, here's your ROI 0, and walk out the door. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave. And sometimes the best thing you can find on the other side is yourself. If my story found you at the right moment, if something here made you feel less alone, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Share your truth. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply say, "This happened to me too."